Okay. Uh, so what we have planned for today is essentially के we'll look at ways to research. ठीक है. If you remember what I told you about making a good speech, so there's three things that come into making a good speech. The first is context. The second is your international law and country policy. And the third thing is called your statistics, right? So in order to have a good speech, you need to have these three things covered, right? So what I essentially mean by context here is, let's say, the general overview of ठीक है, the topic, the general idea about the topic, right? So इसमें क्या क्या आएगा? इसमें you'll have your history, इसमें you'll have your definitions, your case studies, and इसमें we'll have other things as well, right? The causes, the current scenario, current situation. ठीक है, you'll have everything that is not specific to international law, right? Or specific to your country, right? So this will be your general context, जहाँ से you will get to essentially seek knowledge about what the topic really is, right? So this is what the context is. ठीक है. The second thing that you want to focus on is international law and country policy. ठीक है, these are pretty straightforward. There is nothing that is very difficult about these. International law is essentially relevant rulings by the UN on this matter. ठीक है, relevant rulings by the UN, international documentation. Here you have statements made by government officials. Statements by government officials. And then you have domestic law, and then you have your stance at the UN. Okay. So this is everything that comes under international law and country policy. And the last thing that you have is statistics. ठीक है. So statistics में there is क्या कहते हैं, a rule of relevancy. It is an unwritten rule, but एक rule of relevancy होता है कि your statistics must not be older than 30 years. ठीक है, 30 years recent होने चाहिए. uh and the second thing, these can be domestic stats हो सकते हैं या international stats हो सकते हैं. So it doesn't really matter what type of statistics you pull in, but your sources matter, right? So here your sources matter a lot. Your sources can be UN, your foreign ministry, ठीक है, uh, your foreign ministry website, your any country sources, let's say local sources, ठीक है, etc. Right? So there's a lot of different things that मैं आपको बाद में बताऊंगा. Okay. So there's a few sources that you cannot use. ठीक है. Uh, A few sources that you cannot use are essentially Wikipedia, ठीक है, journals, फिर blogs, anything that is opinionated, right? Opinion की spelling से भूल गया. Okay, anything that is opinionated, ठीक है. You cannot rely on anything that is opinionated because they will most probably not have relevant statistics unless you build relevance to it, right?
I thought that Wikipedia, it's like it's not opinionated. मैं तो हर चीज के लिए Wikipedia ही खोलती थी.
No, no. So Wikipedia में essentially ऐसे होता है कि there's an open क्या कहते हैं source for editing, so anyone can edit anyone's documents, right? अगर आपने, if you for example posted an article on Wikipedia about, let's say, starvation, right? Starvation of children in Africa. So if there's someone on the internet that does not believe in your stance, they'll go around and just like start messing with what article you've written, right? So anyone can edit किसी का भी काम. So it's not really the best thing. It used to be very good. I think it was the only source of information in the early 2013 14s now. But then they added this, well, not added, but people started exploiting this option that you can edit anyone's work. So even you can edit someone's work and उसमें आप flaws generate कर दो. It just messes up the entire authenticity of the website. Okay. So now that we've done this, अब इसमें there are a few things that we need to keep in mind, right? So why do you research in the first place, right? So you research to ensure that you have enough content and to make a speech, and that you understand what your topic is, right? So before you make a speech, you need to understand what your topic is. If I tell you to make a speech about, let's say, the uh, border issues, the Kashmir border issue of 1965, right? I think most people don't even know कि Kashmir issue में China has a stance and China has a part of Kashmir. Most people won't even know that, right? So if I tell you to make a speech on the Kashmir issue and from China's point of view, you would say that China is a mediator, they didn't intervene in the issue XYZ, which is wrong, right? Which is why, to understand what the topic is, you need to essentially research on the background of it, right? कि उसकी history क्या थी, what are some important definitions, what is Sachin, uh, what is the economic benefit of one side having Kashmir, what is the geographical benefit of one side having Kashmir, what are some case studies of, let's say, ceasefires या human rights violations, या फिर एक बहुत specific case है which cause an uproar in the Kashmiri societies XYZ, right? What are the causes? What is causing the Kashmir issue to not get solved, and etc. etc. Right? What is the current situation? There was a 6 day blackout. आज खत्म हुआ in Kashmir. So these are some things that you need to keep in mind, right? So getting context and a general idea, I would always recommend that you do not GPT. Well, okay, I'll tell you what parts you can GPT and what parts you shouldn't GPT. So you can GPT this from the contextual side, and perhaps only the name for this, right? So you can GPT this partially. You can GPT this as well, right? So most people, even just school ke teachers, they tell you that AI is not a good tool to use. They tell you this because फिर उससे आपकी research skills and research knowledge नहीं develop होती, right? But for me, I would always recommend, even if you're a starter, that you use any AI tool that you have to research, right? Because the methods that we used will go extinct within the next 1 2 years, because AI इतना strong हो जाएगा कि it will have, let's say, 95 96 97% accuracy, which is literally all you need to research, right? So I would always recommend that जिन चीजों की let's say weightage कम होती है but the time taking, right? For example, definitions and finding out what causes essentially are there for the Kashmir issue. Yeah, what are some issues that are causing the Kashmir issue to not get solved. इस तरह की छोटी छोटी चीजें हैं. You GPT them because they're time taking, but also they don't have a large benefit to you, right? So the three things that I've essentially checked, unko you can GPT. Okay. For other sources, I would always recommend that you go to some article that is published by, let's say, a very renowned personality, right? If I could, let's see if I can show you guys. Mm, next second. Okay, let me change my screen. ये देखो. Okay, so right off the bat, you skip this. You skip this. अब देखो here. If I could just zoom in. देखो. Here, what you will see is आपकी National Assembly की essentially website, which is what I said, Foreign Ministry की website, right? So you can go ahead and open this. ठीक है. And if we go down, ये भी आजाद जम्मू कश्मीर government, you can open this as well. ठीक है. Historical and political perspective, no. BBC, to some extent. Council of Foreign Relations, this is good as well. Human Rights Watch, this is a UN based website, तो उसको भी हम खोल सकते हैं. So we'll open all of these. Okay. So for the National Assembly वाली चीज, you can see, okay, you don't have to exactly read through all of this. What you can do is essentially skim through it and then see कहाँ पे there's these small bullet points that will give you an exact idea of what you need to do, right? Role of the UN. So this is the role of the UN. ठीक है. Uh, I'll just skim through everything because obviously मैंने आगे भी कराना है. तो you can just like go through these, skim through these and see what you find relevant. ठीक है. Uh, and then this is the Azad Jammu Kashmir की website, उनकी government की apparently. Okay. So history, Kashmir issue in a nutshell, right? So you need to make sure कि you bring down your work as small as possible. उसको आप जितना जल्दी कर सकते हो, do it. You make it as quick as possible, right? To do that, you need to look for headings like these, and then you need to look for headings like these, right? So फायदा क्या हुआ मुझे तीन different websites निकालने का, इसके I found something that I did not find on the other two websites, right? Which is the exact stakeholders, right? Once you read through these, you'll get to know everything that you need to know. इसमें बस उसने basically stakeholders का बताया हुआ है. इसमें इसने essentially timeline दिया हुआ है of the Kashmir issue, right? So many सारा, let's assume I've read all of this and I've got extremely good knowledge about the history of the issue, right? अब उससे what I can do is I'll create a chain. I'll show you as well. I am able to create a chain. Now what that chain allows me to do is, let's see, for example, if I have, if I've read the history and I was able to come up with three major issues, right? Three major issues if I was able to come up with, let's say issue A, B, and C. Now, what I'll do with issue A, B, and C is essentially ke I will see where this issue lies today, right? So I'll start creating a chain. I'll say, okay, let's for example see if 1965 may this issue started. So what happened to it afterwards, right? Let's say, okay, there was an update on it on 1971 or 1993. So I'll just start creating a link to see how relevant issue A is in 2025, right? And I'll do the same here. Let's say 1963, 1973, and then I'll go 2003. I'll just like keep on seeing and creating a link as to if that issue that was highlighted in history. stays relevant right now, right? This is a little confusing, but essentially you need to see if, let's say, tab issue bana tha, for example, if the issue was on borders, right? In hypothetically 1947, right? If there was an issue on borders regarding the Kashmir issue. So what you'll do now is that you need to essentially identify the causes, right? So आपका एक cause आ गया borders. Now you need to connect that to your current situation. You need to see if, for example, borders पे मसला आया था, if XYZ borders were not agreed upon, have they been agreed upon now, right? So you skip directly to 2025. Okay, you see, have these borders been agreed upon now? If they have, when were they agreed upon, right? If they have not, so you look at past efforts. Okay, you see past efforts to, let's say, again 1981 में कोई effort हुई थी इस पे to essentially set up new borders, right? If there were any efforts to set up new borders. So you need to look at it from all angles. So what I did was I went to borders, एक second, issue, current situation, if it got solved, when it got solved, and how it got solved. If it is not solved, अगर ये अभी तक एक issue चल रहा है, let's say borders के अगर issue चल रहा है अभी तक, तो what were some efforts जो हुई हुई थी, right? Past actions लिख लेते हैं, right? So what were some past action on this issue? When were the actions, and how did they go, right? So this is essentially how your entire research on context will go, right? So the next thing is international law and country policy. This is one of the easier bits to discuss. Okay, so पहले की तरह I'll tell you what you can GPT and what you cannot. You can GPT this, you can GPT this, and let's say this. Huh. So you can GPT three out of the five things that you want to, right? So you can use AI for three out of the five things that you need in order to come up with an international law, right? So why I say you're not supposed to क्या कहते हैं, AI these two parts, which is the statements by government officials and your stance at the UN, is essentially that this is something that is spoken by people and these words can be easily manipulated, right? अगर आपका AI इतना efficient नहीं, if it's like 75 or 80% efficient, it can make mistakes in the wording that it chooses, right? If the wording essentially changes the meaning of what the person said, so that will be a stance contradiction. So same here, statements by government officials. These are something that you need to look up from the government websites or their social media platforms. Okay. So to research on government statements, you go to websites or you go to social media platforms. Okay. Your stance at the UN is always shown by your Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Okay. Ki website, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ki websites and probably UN ki websites as well. Okay. So the rest you can GPT because relevant rulings by the UN. There's essentially no accuracy issues except for dates. You can counter check those as well. International documentation never an issue. Domestic law also never an issue. But just make sure that once you do GPT, let's say for example, if it asks you, if it let's say provides you with CEDAW Article 8, right? If it gives you CEDAW Article 8 as something that you were looking for, so you need to Google बाद में what CEDAW Article 8 is, ठीक है, and the essential implications of it on your topic, right? So how is it relevant and what it is, ठीक है? So international law and country policy is rather straightforward. उसमें इतना कोई मसला नहीं आता, ठीक है? So this the statistics bit is something that is a little risky to AI. to do with AI. However, I would not recommend it. ठीक है? Okay, you do not GPT it. Do not use AI because starts can be easily manipulated, and there's 10,000 different starts on the same thing. Just for example, I was looking at the uh, I think sexual harassment rates within refugee camps. I think it was so. One website showed me 30%, एक ने 45 दिखाया, फिर एक ने 60 दिखाया, all within the same Middle Eastern region, right? So it really differs. ठीक है कि कहाँ कहाँ पे what statistic is there. So as I said before, there's a few websites that you can rely on, and then there's a few sources that you cannot rely on. ठीक है so the UN is your best source. अब UN में सिर्फ UN की वेबसाइट नहीं आती, so there's a lot of different websites. जैसे UNDP की वेबसाइट आती है, then there's the website of सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल की वेबसाइट है, UNHCR की वेबसाइट है, UNRWA की वेबसाइट है, फिर नहीं ICCPR की तो वेबसाइट नहीं है, क्या नाम है यार उसका, नाम भूल गया, हाँ आईसीआरसी की वेबसाइट है, यस आईसीआरसी की वेबसाइट है. वर्ल्ड बैंक also publishes sources for some reason, I don't know. And yes, so these are a few sources that are relevant. इनके आगे .com.org लिखा होगा या .org.un लिखा होगा. So these are some sources that are relevant for the UN. अब FM की websites I showed you guys, foreign ministry की websites. It will always say, let's say, uh, website dot gov dot pk और website dot gov dot uk. ठीक है, so ये जो होंगी ना जिनमें डॉट गवर्नमेंट लिखा होगा, these are websites that are essentially useful, right? अब for my country the sources show up like this, .government.pk, but I am unsure about how it shows for other websites, right? उसके लिए you would have to research and see what the government website is titled. ठीक है, and for local sources I essentially mean let's say surveys, questionnaires, because those are authentic sources, but उनका sample size कम होता है, right? So sample size is essentially the number of people that are interviewed, या फिर the number of people जिनमें से आपने क्या कहते हैं एक conclusion लिया. Usually a World Bank या ICRC, they take sample size of, let's say, 100,000 or 10,000, but a local survey or a questionnaire would have a sample size of 1,000 at max, right? So those are relevant, but unki sample size kam hota hai, so they look inaccurate, but they're extremely accurate as well, right? So a few things to avoid, as I told before, is Wikipedia, journals, and blogs, because they're extremely opinionated. Why Wikipedia is opinionated is essentially because um, anyone can edit the journal article that is published to Wikipedia. You can go on Wikipedia right now and just edit someone's document. I would not recommend it, obviously, but just to check if what I'm saying is true or not, right? So journals and blogs are very simple. They're extremely opinionated. You will never find a unopinionated, yeah, an unbiased journal or an unbiased blog on any issue, right? So avoid those, right? So any questions regarding the idea of researching?